My fiancée smiled in front of all our friends at my 30th birthday party. "Congratulations," she said, looking at the man standing beside her. "You passed my test." It was supposed to prove I wasn't the jealous type. I just leaned in and whispered, "No, you both just failed mine," and walked out of my own party. This morning, after 50 missed calls, it was him on the phone, crying. Because my test had just cost him his entire career. And it was all on camera. My name is Dylan. I'm 31, a data analyst. My job is to find clear, hard patterns in the middle of chaos. I build my life on logic, on evidence, on things that can be proven. For the last 3 years, I thought I was building that life with Chloe. She's 29, a lifestyle influencer with 200,000 followers. While I was building a future with spreadsheets and financial projections, she was building one with curated photos and personal branding. We lived in a penthouse apartment overlooking the city. I paid the mortgage, I filled our joint wedding fund, I believed it was an investment in us. She, it turns out, saw it as an investment in her. The whole thing started not with a fight, but with a single cell in an Excel spreadsheet. It was our wedding fund tracker. I noticed an anomaly, a withdrawal for $15,000 that I didn't recognize. The memo simply read, "Venue deposit." Chloe was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, probably crafting her next post about authenticity. I kept my voice casual. "Hey, did you put the deposit down for the wedding venue?" She didn't even look up from her screen. "Yep, all taken care of," she said. The lie was so easy for her, so effortless, but data doesn't lie. The next morning, I made a quick call to the venue. They were polite, professional, and had no record of any payment from us. The $15,000 had simply vanished. That's when the investigation began, not an emotional confrontation, just a quiet search for the truth. Our building has high-end security cameras in all the common areas, including the hallways and elevators. I told the concierge I was worried about a package that went missing and asked to review the footage from the past few weeks when I was away on business trips. What I found was a pattern, a clear, undeniable pattern. Him, Bo. The handsome, overconfident sales director, she always called her best friend. The footage showed him arriving minutes after I'd leave for the airport. It showed them in the elevator, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. It showed them returning late at night, laughing, leaning on each other. It wasn't the behavior of just friends. It was the behavior of a couple who thought they were invisible. And with that one piece of hard evidence, all the smaller nagging details, the red flags I had ignored, snapped into focus. I remembered all the times Chloe had subtly mocked my job. She'd call it boring, sitting behind a screen all day. She'd say things like, "My friend's husband just closed a huge deal. He's a real shark. You're more like a quiet dolphin." It was always framed as a joke, but the contempt was there. I remembered how obsessed she was with her image, with being seen with the right people. Our relationship wasn't a partnership to her, it was a part of her brand. I was the stable, reliable boyfriend, the safe bet, the anchor that allowed her ship to sail off into more exciting waters whenever she felt like it. I was a supporting character in the story she was writing about herself. I saw it all so clearly now. I wasn't her partner, I was her safety net. And she had been slowly cutting the ropes for months. Most men would have confronted her right then and there. They would have thrown the evidence in her face, screamed, yelled, demanded answers. That would have been a mistake. An emotional response is what she expected. It's what she wanted. It would have given her the power to twist the narrative, to play the victim, to accuse me of being controlling and paranoid. A big messy fight would have just been noise, and I don't deal in noise. I deal in data. So I did what I do best. I started a new project. I treated it like any other analysis. The objective to achieve a clean, undeniable conclusion. The first step was to broaden my data collection. Confrontation would have shut down all my sources, silence would keep them open. Then I started setting up my instruments. I took an old tablet we never used, the one she used to watch makeup tutorials on, and I factory reset it. I installed a simple voice-activated audio recording app. I placed it on the bookshelf in the living room, hidden behind a stack of art books she'd bought but never opened. Just setting up an extra security camera, I told her casually when she asked. She just shrugged, more interested in her phone. My smartwatch, which she'd always called my nerd gadget, became my primary field recorder. I started wearing it constantly, its microphone always ready. Every conversation, every phone call she took on speakerphone in the apartment became a potential data point. Then I secured the existing evidence. Every clip of her and Bo from the building's security camera was downloaded. I didn't just save them to my hard drive. I encrypted the files and uploaded them to 3 separate secure cloud servers under names that meant nothing. Redundancy is key. This wasn't just about catching her in a lie anymore. This was about building an airtight case, a fortress of facts so absolute that no amount of tears or gaslighting could ever breach its walls. I was calm. I was methodical. I was a man with a purpose. She just saw a quiet, slightly distant fiancé. She had no idea she was living with the architect of her own demise. And then after 2 weeks of this silent observation, she handed me the final piece of the puzzle herself. She sat me down on the couch, her face a mask of fake concern. "Dylan, we need to talk," she said, her voice dripping with practiced sincerity. "I'm worried about you. You've been so distant lately, so suspicious. This jealousy, it's becoming a problem." I just listened, letting her build her own narrative. Then she delivered the line I had been waiting for, the move I had anticipated. She said, "I think you need to meet Beau. You need to see with your own eyes that we're just friends. So I'm going to invite him to your birthday party." It was perfect. It was more than perfect. She wasn't just giving me an opportunity. She was producing, directing, and staging the entire final act. A public forum, an audience. Her arrogance was so vast, she believed she could control every variable, even me. She thought she was setting a test for me. She had no idea she was stepping into mine. I played my part beautifully. I acted hesitant, insecure. "I don't know, Chloe," I said, my voice carefully measured. "That feels really awkward." "It's my birthday," she pushed, just as I knew she would. "That's the point," she insisted. "If you can handle this, you can handle anything. It's a test, Ellen. It's a test to see if you really trust me. A test. That's what she called it." I looked her in the eyes, letting her see just enough fake vulnerability to make her feel secure in her power. Then I said, "Okay, if it's that important to you, I'll do it." She smiled, a triumphant little glint in her eyes. She thought she had won. The trap was set. The bait was her own self-importance. All I had to do was press record and wait for the players to walk onto my stage. The party was in full swing, but it wasn't my party. It was Chloe's stage. My 30th birthday, hosted in the penthouse I paid for, had been transformed into her personal networking event. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the low hum of people talking about themselves. Her influencer friends, a flock of brightly colored birds, chattered about brand collaborations and engagement metrics. My own friends, the few I'd invited, were huddled near the kitchen, looking like anthropologists observing a strange and baffling tribe. I felt like a ghost at my own celebration, a set piece in Chloe's perfectly curated production. Then the main performance began. Beau had arrived late, a calculated entrance designed to make a splash, and now Chloe was leading him through the crowd like a prize she'd just won. She guided him right to me. Her smile was a little too wide, a little too bright. Everyone, she announced, her voice cutting through the music. "Can I have your attention for just a second?" The room quieted down. She put an arm around me, her grip feeling more like a restraint than an embrace. "I just want to say how proud I am of Dylan tonight." Her voice was filled with a fake saccharine sweetness. "He's being so brave, facing his insecurities head on. He's learning what it means to really trust." She squeezed my shoulder and looked right at me, her eyes glittering with a cold, triumphant light. "Isn't that right, honey?" It was a masterstroke of passive aggression, a public declaration that I was the one with the problem. Beau, playing his role as the magnanimous alpha male, clapped me on the back a little too hard. "That's the spirit, buddy," he said, his voice a smooth, condescending purr. "Nothing for you to worry about. Chloe and I were just connected." Old souls, you know, he made it sound like they shared a cosmic bond while I was still trying to figure out how to use a fork. For the next hour, they performed. It was a duet of subtle humiliation with me as their silent, captive audience. Beau told story after story, each one a carefully chosen memory designed to exclude me. "Hey, Chloe, remember that time in Cabo when we..." Or, "This is just like that crazy weekend in Aspen, isn't it?" Every anecdote was a wall built between them and me, and Chloe's laughter was the mortar that held the bricks together. Then Beau turned his performance directly on me. "So Dylan," he said, his voice loud enough for the circle of Chloe's friends around us to hear. "Chloe tells me you're a data guy. You crunch the numbers right," he said, data guy, as if it were a slightly embarrassing medical condition. "Must be peaceful, just you and your spreadsheets all day." He took a sip of his ridiculously expensive scotch. Me, I couldn't do it. I gotta be on the front lines, you know, closing deals, making things happen. The adrenaline is what I live for. Just sealed a 7-figure contract last week. He smirked at Chloe. But hey, someone's gotta keep the lights on, right? And Chloe just giggled. It wasn't a polite laugh, it was a genuine, full-throated laugh of delight. She touched his arm, leaning in. "Oh, stop it, Beau. You're so bad," she purred, but her eyes were locked on me. They were challenging me, daring me to break, daring me to prove I was the jealous, insecure man she had painted me to be. But here's the thing they couldn't possibly understand. I wasn't feeling hurt. I wasn't feeling angry. A month ago, his words would have been like a knife in my gut. Chloe's laughter would have been the twist of the blade. But tonight, it was all just noise. It was raw data. I wasn't listening as a fiancé being humiliated in front of his friends. I was listening as an analyst watching a predictable pattern unfold exactly as the model had predicted. Every condescending remark from him was a data point confirming his arrogance. Every validating giggle from her was a data point confirming her betrayal. They thought they were the predators, toying with their cornered prey. They had no idea the prey was just a decoy. The real hunter was sitting right there with them, silently logging every detail, every word, every damning glance. My heart rate was steady, my breathing was even. I just smiled, my polite, slightly weak smile. I nodded along. I was playing the part they had cast for me because their confidence was my most valuable asset. The higher they climbed on their mountain of arrogance, the farther they would have to fall. And I was happily handing them their climbing gear. The performance went on for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Chloe glanced at her, watch a theatrical gesture for her audience. While she announced, her voice filled with a smug finality that grated on my ears, "I think this went well." She turned to me, and the triumphant glint in her eye was blinding. She leaned in, making sure everyone could hear her verdict. "Congratulations, Dylan, you passed." Her friends let out a few polite claps. Beau smirked, taking a final swig of his scotch as if toasting his own victory. They were all waiting for my reaction. They expected relief, gratitude, maybe even a pathetic fawning apology for ever doubting her. They expected me to be the good little boy who had learned his lesson. I didn't give them any of it. I slowly stood up my movements, deliberate and calm. I looked at Beau, then I looked at her, at my fiancée, the woman who had orchestrated this entire humiliating spectacle, and I smiled. A real smile. It didn't reach my eyes. "No, Chloe," I said. My voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it cut through the noise of the bar like a shard of ice. "You're the one who just failed." Her smile faltered. For the first time all night, a flicker of confusion crossed her face. What she stammered. I didn't answer. I pulled out my wallet, dropped a few large bills on the table, enough to cover their overpriced drinks and then some. "You two enjoy the rest of your night," I said to the room in general. Then I turned and walked out of the bar. I didn't look back. I didn't run. I just walked, leaving them frozen in a tableau of stunned silence. They had expected a fight, a scene, a breakdown. They got calm, polite, and absolute finality. The confusion was the first part of their punishment. And in that moment, walking out into the cool night air, I understood something profound. My action wasn't one of weakness or surrender. It was the only move I had left that mattered. It was a strategy. We are often taught that strength means confronting, that you have to argue your case and fight to win, but there is a greater power, a quieter strength in choosing not to engage at all. The silent exit is not the move of a loser. It is the masterstroke of a player who recognizes the game itself is rigged and no longer worthy of their energy. When I said my final words and walked away, I wasn't surrendering, I was disarming them. I was taking away their greatest weapon, the conflict they craved, the drama that fed their egos. By refusing to participate in their theater of cruelty, I rendered their entire performance meaningless. I turned their victory into a hollow, confusing echo in an empty room. This is the paradox of such battles. Often the only way to truly win is to refuse to fight. You simply calmly walk away from the chessboard, taking your king, your self-respect with you. You leave your opponent alone, staring at the empty, pointless game they themselves created. My war wasn't going to be won with loud words in a dark bar. It would be won with cold, hard data in the quiet of my own home. And it was about to begin. I got home and the silence in the apartment was deafening. It felt clean. I was about to start the next phase of my plan when my phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. It was a text message. It was from Lily Chloe's supposed best friend. The message was short. "Dylan, I'm so sorry. What she did to you tonight was disgusting. I can't be a part of it anymore. You deserve to know the truth." And then she sent the screenshots. It was their group chat. The one Chloe was always typing in, laughing to herself. The messages were from minutes after I'd left the party. Chloe's first message was a laughing emoji. Can you believe the look on his face? He actually thought he was in control. Another friend replied, "He's so pathetic." But it was Chloe's next words that took the air out of my lungs. He's my safe wallet, my boring anchor. A good stable investment while I have my fun. I'm just training him to be less needy, training me like a dog. Lily's final text was simple. She's not your friend, she's a monster. Good luck. It was the final piece of data I needed, the qualitative evidence that perfectly matched my quantitative findings. The betrayal was absolute. I didn't sleep. I worked. Fueled by a cold, clear fury, I spent the entire night building my final report. This was my world, my arena. I bought a domain name, simple, professional, and damning thechloereport.com. I built a clean, one-page website, password protected. It wasn't a messy revenge post. It was a corporate-style analysis of a failed project. It had 3 sections. Section 1 was titled Video and Audio Evidence. I embedded the full, unedited video from the party. The audio was crystal clear. Every condescending word from Beau, every gleeful laugh from Chloe, perfectly preserved. I even added subtitles for clarity. Section 2 was financial analysis. I created a simple, easy-to-read dashboard. On one side, a pie chart showing my contributions to our joint wedding fund. On the other, a detailed transaction list for the $15,000 she had taken. The $2,000 handbag, the spa day, the trips I wasn't invited on. Every purchase was a line item in her story of deceit. Section 3 was communication records. I uploaded every single screenshot Lily had sent me, her calling me a safe wallet, her bragging about training me. It was all there in black and white. At 5 in the morning, as the sun began to rise over the city, I drafted 2 emails. The first was to Arya Beau's fiancé. The subject line was simple, regarding Beau, urgent and confidential. The body of the email was brief and respectful. I introduced myself, explained the context of the test, and stated that I believed she had a right to know the truth about the man she was about to marry. I ended with, I am deeply sorry to be the bearer of this news. The second email was to her father, Raymond, the CEO. The subject line was even more direct, employee conduct matter Beau, last name. The email was formal, professional. I wrote that I had come across evidence of highly unethical and unprofessional conduct by one of his senior employees that had direct and serious implications for his family. In both emails, I included the link to the website and the simple password, truth. Then I hit send on both, and I waited. The fallout wasn't a slow burn, it was an explosion. The first domino fell at 9:15 a.m. I got a notification from a business news site I follow. Beau had been escorted from the building. The official story would be resignation for personal reasons, but I knew what it was. Raymond was a man who didn't tolerate betrayal. The second domino fell an hour later. Arya, a woman of quiet power, didn't create a scene. She simply posted a single elegant picture of a new dawn from a plain window on her Instagram story. The caption was, "Sometimes you have to burn down an old life to build a new one. Onwards." And then she tagged Chloe. That one tag was all it took. Her followers and the followers of her powerful father flooded Chloe's page. The link to thechloereport.com was leaked in the comments within minutes. The site went viral in our social circle. Her phone must have been melting down. The brands she worked with, the ones who paid her to represent empowerment and authenticity, started to pull out. Her influencer friends, the ones who had clapped for me at the party, went silent. They didn't defend her, they just disappeared. Her entire carefully constructed world of fake friends and hollow sponsorships was evaporating in real time. To understand why her world crumbled so fast, you need to understand the concept of social capital. There are 2 kinds. There's bonding capital, the deep trust-based relationships you build with true friends and family. And then there's bridging capital, the wide, shallow network of connections you build for status and opportunity. My social capital, while small, was the bonding kind friends who would give me a place to stay without asking a single question. Chloe's entire network, on the other hand, was bridging capital. Her friends were people who came to parties I paid for, who admired the penthouse I financed, who connected with her because she was connected to Beau, who was connected to power. When the foundation, the money, the status, the image that I unknowingly provided was ripped away, her social capital wasn't just devalued, it was revealed to have been worthless all along. Those people didn't betray her. They simply acted according to the true nature of their relationship. When the benefit is gone, the connection is over. It's a brutal lesson in the difference between building a life and building a brand. One is made of stone, the other is made of smoke. The chaos began almost immediately. My phone, which had been silent for hours, started to vibrate violently on the kitchen counter. It was Chloe. I watched it buzz her face, a smiling, professionally edited picture flashing on the screen. It rang once, twice, then stopped. A few seconds later, it started again. After the fifth missed call, the texts started pouring in. They were a perfect case study in the stages of narcissistic rage. First came the disbelief and anger. You can't be serious. You're ruining my life over a stupid joke. Pick up the phone right now. Then came the threats. I'm calling my lawyer. You can't just post things about me online. This is slander. You'll be hearing from my father. After that, the bargaining and love bombing. Baby, please, let's just talk about this. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I love you. Only you. Bo meant nothing. Please, just let me come home and we can fix this. And finally, when none of that worked, came the full-blown victimhood. How could you do this to me? I gave you everything. After all I've done for you, you abandon me and try to destroy my reputation. You're a monster, Dylan. A cruel, heartless monster. I read every single message. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt nothing. It was like reading error logs from a malfunctioning system. Just a stream of corrupted data that no longer had any relevance. I waited until the flood of messages paused. I knew she was waiting, desperate for a response. Any response to know she still had some hold over me. Then I typed out my one and only reply. It was short, cold, and final. I wrote, "You turned our relationship into a performance for your brand." I simply published the performance review. We are done. Then I blocked her number. I blocked her on every social media platform. I blocked her email. I severed the connection completely. Then I arranged for a moving company. I gave them the address to her parents' house. I didn't throw her things in boxes. That would have been emotional. Instead, I packed her life with the same methodical precision I used for my work. Every designer dress was folded. Every expensive shoe was placed carefully in its box. Her 37 shades of lipstick were lined up neatly in their case. I wanted her to receive her life back, not in a state of chaos, but in a state of cold, clinical order. I wanted her to understand that this wasn't a messy breakup. It was a calculated, irreversible termination. The two worlds couldn't have been more different. Her world was imploding. She had lost her fiancé, her apartment, her sugar daddy, her career, and her entire social standing in the space of 12 hours. She was a brand without a sponsor, a queen without a kingdom, left with nothing but the hollow echo of her own lies. My world, on the other hand, was becoming quiet. It was becoming mine again. As the movers carried the last box out of my apartment, I felt a physical weight lift from the space. The air felt lighter, the rooms felt bigger. I walked through the empty closets, the half-empty bathroom cabinets, and I didn't feel loss. I felt peace. I opened the windows, letting the city air in. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat on my couch in my silent, clean apartment. There was no more drama, no more tests, no more performances. It was over. Looking back, I realized what had happened in purely analytical terms. For years, I had been running a system with a critical hidden error, a piece of corrupted code that was slowly draining resources, causing instability, and preventing the system from functioning as it was designed. Chloe wasn't a person in my life anymore. She was a bug in the code. And my actions over the past few weeks weren't revenge. They were simply the most logical, efficient way to debug the system. I had identified the error, I had isolated it, and then I had removed it permanently. The feeling wasn't happiness. It was the clean, quiet satisfaction of a system that was finally running perfectly. Chloe's calls and texts eventually slowed to a trickle, then stopped. I imagine her world is still a whirlwind of frantic damage control, of blaming everyone but herself. My world, however, is quiet. The peace is so profound, it's almost deafening. Friends have called congratulating me. They use words like epic and revenge. I don't see it that way. Revenge is a hot, emotional act. What I did was cold. It was an audit, a final report on a failed partnership. I simply gathered the facts, organized them into a clear and concise presentation, and delivered it to the relevant stakeholders. Her reaction, Bo's downfall, the social implosion, that wasn't my doing. That was simply the market correcting itself. I've thought a lot about that night at the party, about the victory. It felt good, undeniably. Watching a system you've built work perfectly always does. But as the days have passed, a different question has settled in my mind, a more important one. What if the report had failed? What if Raymond had decided to protect Beau to bury the story? What if Arya had chosen to forgive him? What if Chloe's influencer friends had rallied around her and successfully painted me as the villain? Would my decision to walk out of that bar still have been the right one? The answer is yes. Absolutely yes. We are all conditioned by something called outcome bias. We judge a decision not on the logic or the courage it took to make it, but on the result. If you win, it was a brilliant move. If you lose, it was a foolish mistake. But that's a trap. The true value of what I did wasn't in the email I sent at 5 in the morning. It wasn't in Beau's firing or Chloe's public humiliation. The victory wasn't the outcome, it was the choice. The real win happened in that noisy, overpriced bar. It was the moment I looked at the woman I was supposed to marry, a woman who was actively, gleefully trying to break me down, and I chose my own self-respect over her toxic game. The moment I stood up and walked away, I had already won. The success of leaving is not measured by the balance in your bank account or the misery of your enemy. It's measured by the peace you reclaim for your own soul. Anything that happened after I walked out that door, all the beautiful, satisfying chaos, that was just a bonus. The true victory, the one that really matters, was already mine. And that's the real lesson here. The one they don't teach you. Silence isn't weakness. It's the time you spend collecting data. Calmness isn't surrender. It's the clarity you gain when you remove emotion from the equation. And walking away isn't quitting. It's the ultimate act of taking control. It's moving the game to a board where you set the rules. Chloe and Beau thought they were playing checkers, making loud, obvious moves to corner me. They never realized I was playing chess, watching them advance their pieces exactly where I needed them to be, setting them up for a trap they couldn't see in a game they didn't even know they were playing.